How to remove the transmission pan on a 10R80. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to talk like that. Okay. So, this is how it'll look under here. Earlier models will have different cooler design. Like a 2018 model, I believe, 2018. It'll just have lines going away. You just remove the nut for that and it'll move out of the way. So, okay. Step one. On the right side, remove the fill plug. It's a 19 millimeter. That's what I've got here, long ratchet. Ta-da! Next step, go ahead and locate your sway bar. Remove the 4 nuts, fastening it to the frame. Be mindful, it will drop down. So on the last nut, support it, let it fall, or let it sit down. Alright, that'll give you room to lower the transmission cooler. So the next step, locate your 10 millimeter nut, fastening the cooler lines to the transmission. Remove that. Remove this 10 millimeter nut. Remove the 10 millimeter bolts holding the cooler to the transmission case. They are located right here and right here. And then remove the fastener holding the cooler line to the engine oil pan right there. And then remove the nut holding the cooler lines to the other end of the transmission. Once again, remove this bolt, the two holding the cooler on, this bolt, and the nut right here on the other side. Okay, with those out of the way, go ahead and come to the passenger side. Locate this that you just pulled the nut off of. Go ahead and remove that off the stud to get more slack. Okay, if there's any retainers that, like plastic retainers, go ahead and pop them off, but this one doesn't have it. Okay. Ow. Get you a oil drain, put it underneath here, and go ahead with the bolt removed. Go ahead and pop that out. Do keep track of the rings that go on here. Okay, there are 2 rings on each hole for the cooler lines. A thick one which goes into the case first, and those are both in there. And then there's, I don't want to pull it off, but then there's these little ones too. So they do have a specific taper to them. Make sure you put the smaller side of the taper inward. Okay. So the next step is to remove the shields, the heat shields on the pan. Go ahead and take a ratchet with a 10 millimeter socket, break them all loose. That way they don't stick to the stud. If you were to use an impact, they would pull the stud out with it. So take them off by hand. A little tip: certain models of F-150, you may have trouble getting to the rear ones. Go ahead and get a long 10 millimeter wrench and insert it this way and get on the nut at a slight angle, and you'll be able to break it loose. Same thing with the stud underneath it once you get to that point. It's a 13 millimeter stud. If you have a 5.0 V8, you're going to want to this is a 2-wheel drive model, so I'm not going to be able to show you, but 4-wheel drive obviously have a transfer case here. The mount has 2 black bolts on each side, fastening it to the transfer case. Remove those bolts and jack up the transfer case. That will give you clearance to pull the pan off on an F-150 5-liter or Expedition 5-liter at V8. The V6 models, you do not have to worry about that. This is a V6 model. Okay, little tip. You can put a little bit of a bend. This is very thin metal. Just put a little bit of a bend, pull down on the back of it, and it'll clear the exhaust. And then you can just straighten it out when you're done. Okay, next locate the positions of the 13mm studs on the pan and mark them with a paint marker or a chalk marker. That way you know that you're putting them on in the right location for the heat shields. Okay, after you mark the locations of that, go ahead and remove the two rear studs, which are 13s. Okay, then remove the 8mm on the side here, on the back of the pan. And then comes the easy bolts to get to. Just 2 bolts at a time on each side. Just work your way forward, and eventually, after about right here, you'll notice the fluid starting to drain out. Just stop pulling the bolts out then, let it drain, and then continue pulling the bolts out all the way around, and get the pan off. You may drain the fluid into a suitable draining device. Drain it in a container if you want to measure how much comes out. If you did not do that, you can start with 5 quarts when you're filling it back up. That'll get you in the ballpark. Alright, so once you're down to the last bolt, go ahead and support the pan, get it, because it's going to drop down a little bit. There's the last bolt right there. Hope you can see alright. Alright, so just let the pan fall a little bit. Pull it back forward. There's going to be some fluid in it still, so once you're past the exhaust, drop it down slowly, let it drain. I didn't expect this much fluid to still be in it. My cameraman here is busy, so I'm going to so tip it down at about a 45-degree angle and slide it back, and there's your pan. And once again, if you have the 5-liter V8, you are going to have to raise the transfer case independently of the cross member. Okay, and in order to do that, you will need to take the 4 black bolts attaching the transmission mount to the transfer case, and then you'll be able to raise it independently. How to clean up a giant mess featuring Big Ben Cars and Cycles. Please subscribe for more screw-ups. I'm sure it's going to happen. Oh, 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 it's magic. I do not own the rights to that song. This is for entertainment purposes only. Okay, that includes removal of the pan. The filter is held on with 2 8mm fasteners. So that concludes it. The pan gasket is reusable if it's in good condition. It's a molded rubber gasket. Please subscribe. Thank you for watching. Feel free to leave a comment and I'll reply to it. Have a nice day.